All right, gang, let's talk about method parameters. Now, this is something similar to what you saw when you were working with Python functions and passing numbers into the functions. You were basically passing parameters that gave the functions a way of operating a certain number of times, number of steps, actions it took, things like that. And so basically that's kind of where we're headed with this. You'll notice in the tip that the terms parameter and argument are used synonymously. I'll always say parameter. Argument sounds too negative to me. Arguments aren't good. A method declaration can include parameters which accept values from the method call. And you should have learned last week what a method call is. And you had empty parentheses at the end of your method calls. Well, now what we're going to do is insert a data type and a parameter name, kind of like a variable, but not really. In a way, it acts the same way, though. So if you notice at the top, when we look at drawbar here for our first example, we have drawbar int length. Well, that's a data type of integer and a name length. And it's going to receive a value from the call in the main method. So if we look down to the bottom here where the main method is is drawbar I. So it's a little unusual, but we're going to see it quite a bit, where I from the for loop, remember we use integer I equals 1 to get started because we need 1. And we're going to go through 6 and increment by 1 each time with I++. Drawbar I is actually the method call up to the drawbar method, and it passes the length or as I, and I becomes the number of asterisks or stars that are printed in this program. So if we look at how this code kind of comes together, 6 times it's going to send drawbar the I parameter. So it's first time it sends it a 1, then a 2, then a 3, then a 4, all the way through 6. And by doing that, it prints 1, or it prints 2, or it prints 3 stars. And so what we end up with is this right triangle. That's why it's called the right triangle class. So to follow on that idea, we gotta keep going and look a little deeper. Arguments passed by value, which means the data is stored in an argument, is passed. It's a primitive data type, and it gives the method a copy of its value. So since it's a primitive data type, like an integer or a double, it just says, hey, I already have this value. Why don't you just take it and you use it? And so now I was handed off to length in the example above, and that became the number of times that it ran. Multiple parameters is also possible. We don't have to be limited to just passing one parameter. We can pass multiple. So maybe we have the integer parameter for length and a string parameter for the character, if you look at how they're writing this for us. So we have a length here and we have a string for mark. Well, string is our data type. Remember, we can use any data type as long as they match to the data being passed in the method call. So in this case, we have to assume we're going to be passed an integer and a string. Now, it could be 2 integers, could be an integer and a double, could be a double and then an integer. Any order, as long as the order of what you're accepting matches the method call. And so right here, the method call is drawbar $6, and the first time it runs, it's going to print $6. So you kind of have to take a second, step back, and kind of interpret what they're doing here. They're letting us change what's being printed by, instead of putting the asterisk here, they're actually putting the parameter mark, which comes from the character here. No, I'm sorry, not the character, the string of $. You can tell it's a string because it's in double quotes. So length is an integer, mark is a string, and mark is what's printed multiple times, 6 times basically, because that's what we asked for when we passed the parameter of length. Length became the control in the for loop. It is not a println, so it's not multiple lines. It's on a single line, and that became our output down here. Now, the other thing to remember, we have an integer and we have a string. This paragraph, and I highlighted this in the homework in Canvas too, the order of arguments in a method call is important because the first argument corresponds to the first parameter in the method declaration. The second argument corresponds to the second parameter, and so on. But also pay attention to the fact that names do not always match parameter names. Just like above, we're passing i's value, and it's being received by length. So they don't have to match. They just have to be the same data type, and they're both integers. So that's really the core of what we have to know for this concept being explained in this lesson. Now, Spanish numbers is kind of interesting. Create an application that just displays numbers 1 through 10 in Spanish, a method with an int parameter. So we're going to have an int parameter received by a method called Spanish. And a loop structure in the main method. Well, we just learned that for loops are the best way to control this. We're going to call it 10 times. So we interpret that as a less than or equal to 10. We got to start at 1 because uno is 1. And valid numbers 1 through 10 are used. So let's look at the way the author implemented that. You don't have to write this code. This is for review or for understanding. So if we look at the main method down at the bottom, we have our for loop controlled by I equal to 1 and goes to less than or equal to 10 incremented by 1. We call the method Spanish and passed I as the parameter received by the Spanish method into the parameter num. So num becomes the same value as I each time through the loop. Well, this loop you should easily recognize is going to count from 1 to 10 at this point. So each time it counts, it increments the counter. It calls up to the method. The method uses case 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, and it prints out each of the lines that are in this program. So it's kind of a simplistic but good way to process this data. And notice how it prints out the outputs included here. And just wanted to point out that this was another way of seeing how the for loop controls passing the I parameter as a data element to the receiving method. So after this, this week's assignment is not display box. It's actually down numerous pages down to page 175 at the end of the chapter, exercise 2. And in exercise 2, it's called metric conversion. I chose this because this should be fairly straightforward for you coming off of last week's lab, where each method does a specific calculation. Now, you're going to create a metric conversion application. Again, we're going to print out a menu, and then we're going to use the case scenario to take this choice from the menu and call a method and send a process, call the method to be processed. The user's going to enter the number first, though, that they want to modify. So this is actually in your homework, and we can look at the code for this real quick. I've supplied you this code. Real important here. Put your name on the code. Everybody's code, you should do something simple. Control A, Control C, go to your editor like JCreator, or if you're using the online tool, and then Control V to paste. So Control A selects all, Control C copies it, Control V to paste. Now I've left you the first method, just like I did last week. I left you inches to centimeter. It's going to receive number. It's going to create an answer. And number is And to create answer, numbers multiplied by 2.54. Now I'm doing inches equal to centimeters. So in the rest of these methods that you're creating, you're going to use the same basic format. In fact, you can copy and paste all these lines. You don't even have to change variable names, and I actually don't want you to. Let's stick to what's easy. This is a pattern that's usable. All you have to change is what is your calculation you're actually doing. Keep your spacing in place. Make sure your output is clean in every one of these. I want to see extra attention paid to your output because some of you have been very sloppy. You're going to do the next one, feet to centimeters, and so on all the way down. There's 8 of them. Now, in this lesson, you can just keep reusing those codes. The user is you're going to ask the user for the number to convert, like 10. Come down here, give him a menu to pick from, and say, enter the desired conversion 1 through 8. He's going to give you an answer. His choice, when he enters it, is going to select a switch or a case from the switch, and it's going to do a process. And it's going to take the number that the user entered, turn it into the parameter passed in the method call right here, send it up to the method, and the method receives it as its data component for processing. So I hope you see what I'm talking about. I want you to use the pattern from the first method. I want your name, and I want to see your output. So let's look at what does the output look like. You're going to have to do more than one screen print this week, I'm pretty sure. Let's convert 10. And right now, the only valid code that I left intact is method 1. So I'm going to select 1. And 10 inches equals 25.4 centimeters. So that's basically what you're going to do for your output. And again, I need to see your output functioning, not with number 1. I already gave that to you. Give me 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, something else, but not the one I wrote. All right. Let's take a look at the assignment. Chapter 7 that I was just going over, I have a new highlighted version, and I'm going to be doing this every week. You're always going to want to get the latest version. It's highlighted our ideas for this week, and actually it has next week's already highlighted in it. I was going to double up, but there's just too much to cover here. I need you to go ahead and read through this. Don't assume what you looked at in the book is the whole story. There's a lot here that'll help you with your understanding. I went through Spanish numbers and even showed you that here again. Then metric conversion, here's your lab. Now here's the download file. You have got to use this file. Copy and paste it, whatever you need to do. Everyone start here. Put your name on it. I want to see everybody's code done independently. Do not Google this problem. Those of you that have been doing that have been submitting bad work using the wrong concepts, and I've been giving you bad grades. Some of you might have snuck past me, but most of you, I got you. All right, so conversions 1 to 4 are provided in the book right here. For number 5 through 8, I'm going to make your life even easier. For number 5, it's this one, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8. And you're going to use those as a multiplier. So I want you to make sure you test each menu choice, submit fully functional and tested code with your name at the top and some output at the bottom, and start with that file I provide. You will probably have to do multiple screenshots. If you get it in one screen, it's probably so small I can't read it. Remember, when you make it small, I get it even smaller because of how Canvas processes your document. All right, guys, have a good week, and I hope it goes well.